What's going on, everybody, and welcome into this edition of Card Central 365 right here on STL Sports Central. Today's episode powered by Gray Bar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. Plus, all content here on STL Sports Central is brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Brenden Schaeffer along with Mike Claiborne as the Cardinals head on a Florida road trip looking to rebound from a tough week at Busch Stadium. The series lost to the Rockies took the wind out of the sails, Claibs. And then over the weekend with the Yankees, you had a couple of late leads, unable to hold them. Just your interpretation of what we saw this weekend and what was honestly a pretty lackluster result for the Cardinals against the Bronx Bombers.
Well, it was one of those situations where, it was like the perfect storm. You had a couple of injuries. Maybe you've gone to your bullpen a little too much because your starting pitching hasn't been very good. And when you have all those things working against you, man, those things that we saw over the weekend have a tendency to happen. Throw in the fact that you have some youth that, they're trying to figure this out. So I said it's the perfect storm. And I don't know how you get out of this. I don't know if there's an umbrella for it because you're going to have some guys that are still hurt. You're pitching, you're having guys pitch more innings than they ever have. So I don't know what that looks like. But in the end, the result, I think this is part of what you call the rebuild or the reload or the retool or the whatever. You're going to have times like this, and we're seeing it now.
Yeah, we certainly are. And you mentioned the injuries. I think when you play a weekend with some key pieces that you were short, but the Cardinals also make the decision, hey, we're going to try to string it along with Wilson Contreras and Brendan Donovan until these guys get back healthy. That's a tough spot to be in. But I guess, Claves, when you look at the depth that would be coming up on the 40-man roster, is it fair to say that the Cardinals just look at it and say, hey, man, 3, 4, 5 days without Brendan Donovan, that's worth the chance to not have to IL him rather than it's a Jose Fermin. It's a depth piece that, is not not necessarily a humongous difference maker. Is that kind of the way that you view the very difficult roster choices?
I think we've seen the best of what the organization has to offer already. And it's nothing against Jose Fermin. I think he's a pretty serviceable player. But you don't have anybody in the minors that's ready to go. And I know people were clamoring for Weatherholt. That's not going to happen. I think when you look at Nathan Church, I thought that there was something they needed to take a look at. And here's the thing. We talk about they're young, they're this, they're that. No, they're not. I mean, they got a lot of 25, 27-year-old players that we still don't know whether they can actually play or not. So you might as well find out what you have now. So when you go into this offseason, if you need to make some adjustments, and I expect that they will, you know what you already have, and you know what you now need.
Yeah, I think Nathan Church is a good example of that because when we hear about these guys from AAA, and we maybe don't know as much about them until we see them, in our heads we go, oh, he must be a prospect. He's a younger guy. I mean, he's a guy that's now 25 years old. And when you start talking about the number of players they'll have to protect from Rule 5 eligibility this coming off season, you've already got a 40-man roster with a lot of guys in that range that you still aren't sure about. So don't necessarily look at Nathan Church and then say, oh, we've got to hold on to him, but we're not really going to use him until 2-3 years down the road. I think this could be the best thing for the Cardinals to give a little bit of time to Church. If he can play, all right, you maybe factor him in for next year. If he can't, then you might know that before saying, oh, I'll use a 40-man spot on him in the winter.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. And, I look at guys like Nathan Church, who's having a really good year in the minors. He's 25 years old. He's gone through college. This isn't a guy who's out of high school who didn't really have the college experience, because I kind of look, when you look at some of these schools now, they're equivalent, in my opinion, to maybe AA. So when a guy gets out of school at 23, he should already be AA ready. But when you're 25 and you ascend from AA to AAA, you got to kind of wonder about the development factor. And, and Church isn't by himself. There's some other guys that are in that situation too. So, you probably have to reassess, how are we developing players to be big league ready? And, when you look at where Church is, we've seen one game, and, when you hear from people who tell you, he's having a really good year, but what does that look like at this level? And I like it for this reason. You got to push some people to be better. And we don't have enough internal competition that players feel like, my job is safe. So I think maybe a Nathan Church sends a message not to one particular player because he played center field. You know, I'm not saying he's sending a message to Victor Scott. Victor Scott's hurt, but there's some other guys that probably needed to step up and be a little bit more consistent because maybe a Nathan Church can replace somebody. If not, maybe there's somebody else down the road. But I think there has to be more internal competition.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, Claibs, and I'll put a name to it for one of those guys. I mean, Lars Nootbaar hasn't had the season that a lot of people were thinking he could have, and certainly not up to his career norms. Now, yesterday, he goes 3 for 4 as the left fielder, and so you like seeing that. But
it doesn't do it enough. Doesn't do it enough.
That's what I was just getting ready to say. For him and maybe many others in this lineup, I do want to talk pitching in a moment, but on lineup stuff, is it just about, hey, this last 5-6 weeks, the consistency of these performances? I think the Cardinals want to see that from Lars Nootbaar. You really want to see it from, Burleson, from Herrera even, who's still got the 800 OPS, but has started to dip off. Is that sort of what these next few weeks can be about, is say, hey, it's great to do it once. String it together a few times in a week. String it together for a month to give a little bit of confidence in what this could look like moving forward.
Oh, I agree. And, you include a Nolan Gorman in that category. I mean, there are a lot of guys that you probably need to make a decision on. And if they move on somewhere else and they have a good career, then good for them. But it wasn't because they didn't get a chance. And that's where we're at now. But I guess the other problem is this. It's not like we have a bunch of guys chomping at the bit ready to play that's in the organization. So that's another concern. And so you can try and build from within, but you have to be able to find some other players in other organizations and maybe coach them up. And I think the best example are the Milwaukee Brewers. They only have 5 homegrown guys on their roster. So they've been able to find guys in other organizations, and they found something about them that they felt like they could coach up and develop into something that can be a contributor. Now, when you look, and you're a baseball guy, but for the casual fan, you look at the Brewer lineup and you say, well, who are these guys? I mean, okay, you recognize a couple of guys that, have had pretty good runs in their career, but there are a lot of guys you're scratching your head trying to figure out who are these guys and why are they so consistent?
And you look at where they get them from as well. It's just they always find a way to identify. They're not really overpaying. They're getting what they're looking for. A great example is the Aaron Savali trade, where he says, I don't want to be here if you're not going to start me. And they say, fine, we're going to send you to the White Sox. And get a guy who's a rebound player, right? And now he's Andrew Vaughn. He is raking for the Brewers. It's unbelievable what they've been able to do. And Claibs, are they the best team in baseball right now for the way that they are running that organization, or would you look in another direction?
Yeah, I think for what they've invested, I would say yes. They don't have a big payroll, but they obviously know how to coach up people. And, in this batch that they have now, as soon as they come up to that point of arbitration and or free agency, they'll move on, find somebody else. And I think when I look at going back to Josh Hader, you saw Devin Williams. There have been some other players that they've walked away from. And you say, well, they're done now because these guys are really good. Yeah, they are, but they're not as good as they were when they were in Milwaukee. And you have to give them a lot of credit in how they've been able to manage that.
And they're moving guys when they have value, right? It feels like at times with the Cardinals, we look and say, did you wait a year too late with this player where he might have had some value, but you didn't feel it was enough? And then it craters to ground zero. Whereas you mentioned a couple of names. I mean, Devin Williams was moved. Caleb Durbin comes over in that trade. He's currently contributing to Milwaukee. DL Hall was a pitcher they got for Corbin Burns, and he's just a reliever at this point, but he's been a fine reliever. You find guys that are able to extract the value when you can. And that kind of leads to this question that I have. It was said, I believe, on a local radio station, 101 ESPN this week, was said by Buster Olney, talking about Chaim Bloom coming in. And that maybe rival executives would say about him that maybe a knock on him from when he was with Boston was that he would agonize over trades and wouldn't necessarily have a decisive factor at times. And is that something that he could improve upon with the Cardinals? That maybe worries me a little bit, Claibs, because to your point, there's a lot of things that it feels like has to happen this offseason. Not only do you have to decide about the guys on this team, but go out and identify some guys from elsewhere that you can turn this thing around. And it doesn't have to be all homegrown guys, but identification and knowing, hey, if this is a move we can make, can we bring in this guy to help us? And then to be decisive with that. What's your take on that and what we might see?
What I would say to that, I think you have to think about the ownership that he was dealing with, who wanted to do some things differently. And I know I've heard that before where he couldn't pull the trigger. Well, in this situation, he has a whole arsenal. He can do whatever he needs to do in order to make this operation better, compared to an owner saying, all right, we're going to gut this thing. We need to move this guy, move that guy. Now, if you want to say, well, he waited too long for this player to make a deal, I think some of the players he got back in the Mookie Betts deal have been phenomenal for what they've been able to do in Boston. And he made some other deals that have certainly bode well for what the Red Sox are doing. So I really look at this opportunity to be quite different with respect to him having more influence on deals. That doesn't mean he's going to go out and sign a guy to a $200 million contract, but I do think he will be in a better position to recognize what this organization needs and how he can get it, and be able to grow quicker because he doesn't have someone micromanaging him.
Yeah, I think the influence of ownership is going to be very key in this transition from John Mozeliak to Chaim Bloom, because when we've seen and heard from the DeWitts, they've talked about, there were some things that kind of got away from them as an organization, and now they've started to invest already in some of those things when it comes to infrastructure. And we know that Chaim Bloom with Boston, one of the hallmarks was the farm system that he was able to create, and that's still something that's benefiting them to this day. They really called up a bunch of their top prospects this year. So I think that's an interesting point, Claibs. And do you feel that that's going to be the case where the DeWitts are going to be on the same page and say, hey, we hired this guy for a reason because we believe that he can sort of upgrade and update a lot of the things that we need in our org. And part of it's just going to be to let him do his job and allow for that success to be bred really in St. Louis.
Yeah, I think so. I think they've already indicated that by allowing him to make multiple hires within the minor league system and just the overall developmental phase of the organization. So I really feel like in this case, he's in a different environment completely compared to what he had been characterized to be in when he was in Boston.
Could be very beneficial to see moving forward as Chaim Bloom takes over this coming offseason as the POBO of the St. Louis Cardinals. I want to ask Claibs a few things about the upcoming pitching matchups that the Cardinals will be deploying for this upcoming series in Miami. But first, I want to take a moment to tell you about DraftKings Pick 6. Nothing beats relaxing on a hot summer day and watching baseball. And the simplest way to get in on the action is to download the Pick 6 app from DraftKings. It's crazy simple. You just pick more or less on the stats of two or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. Pick 6 is available right here in Missouri, so don't miss out on the fun and don't settle for a smaller payout. Switch to Pick 6, and right now, new customers can get $25 in bonus picks with their deposit of a first deposit of $5. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Claib, something I find really interesting about this upcoming series for the Cardinals that begins tonight in Miami with a 5:40 first pitch Central Time is the pitching matchups. Matthew Liberatore, Michael McGreevy, Andre Pallante slated to go for the Cardinals in this series. Those are three guys that remain under team control, ostensibly would be around next year, but we've also seen varying degrees of struggles of guys working through things recently. I want to start with Libby. What's your interpretation of what we've seen from him recently? Obviously, the strong start has had a couple of occasions where he has not been able to extend deeper into outings and maintain that velocity. That maybe is something he's working through right now. Where are you right now with Libby, Claibs, and what you've seen from him lately?
Yeah, I think he's at a crossroads, to be honest with you. Is he a real starter or is he a length guy in the bullpen? Because he's hit the wall again, and this is a guy that was given a couple of weeks off after the All-Star break. So you felt like, okay, we're going to build him up and get him going again. And I know he's exceeded his innings total for, in his career this year. But it seems like, man, he's got to get out of the fourth inning. And, he's a smart guy. I really like what I see in him. He knows what he's capable of doing. And he also knows when he's done, with regard to the velocity being down, after that second round through the batting order. And I just think that he's a microcosm of what baseball pitching is all about. We've allowed guys to accept that role of, 2 times through the order, 5 and 5, maybe 6. And, when it doesn't work, where maybe the opposition has a better tell on you than you think, and all of a sudden you're using a lot of pitches a lot earlier than what you used to, that's what you have. And I really look at the other starters, and McGreevy still, his sample size is a little small. But when you look at Palante, same guy, good for the first round. If he gets through the first round, he's going to be okay. But when it unravels for him, it comes out, off the chain, where the point where you can't get a guy to warm up quick enough because it just implodes right there in front of everyone. And you got to make some decisions here on, or are they the future? Are they guys that you can find a role for? Because right now, I'm not sure if we have a 1 through 5 starter. Sonny was not good yesterday. You look at some other guys who struggled. Sonny wasn't good Saturday. Miles Michaels gave you a lot, doesn't get any support run-wise. And then you throw the other 3 guys out there, and we just talked about them. I don't know what they would look like on a very good team. And that's what we're striving for, right? A very good team. I'm not looking to just have, I'm in the big leagues. No, I need you to be better because we want to be better. And if you can't be better, then you got to find another option.
That to me is why this upcoming series is so interesting, because you detailed Liberatore very well. McGreevy, I think I want to see more of him, and I feel decently comfortable with him being a guy they'll plug in next year. He is a little bit
he's
more.
Here. Yeah,
he's here, man, and he's more pitch to contact than you want, because you see with Palante's the other guy that I want to talk about. He's got that pitch to contact nature, but in his last start he struck out 8. And you go, where'd that come from? But he also got, hit around a little bit, and the walks have always plagued him. And he's a guy where he is into arbitration eligibility. So as you start to think about salary a little bit with Palante, his ERA's 5, and you're starting to wonder, okay, for next year, like you said, McGreevy's here. I think Liberatore, is going to be, but he's got to pitch past the 4th inning. Where do you come down on Palante? Because we've seen him at times be very effective, and then others, it's just, it looks untenable out there for him. And as you're thinking toward 2026, you want to be a very good team. It's hard to take the highs and the lows with Palante, at least what we've seen from him more recently.
Well, and I'll go back to this. If you want to be a very good team, where would he fit in your rotation? And I would say 5th starter when he's really, really good. So that means you have a lot of work to do to find somebody from 5 on down as far as starters are concerned. I think we've seen enough for him to know that he's a guy that can help you, but not in the role that he's in now.
Yeah, because they've got too many
because
guys.
He's got to find, one of the things we talk about on the broadcast is being able to make the adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a problem with plan B. What is plan B when my stuff isn't working? When I can't get the knuckle curve or I can't get him to swing at it. What does that look like? What do you go to next if these guys have figured you out and we haven't seen enough of plan B? And if you don't have a plan B in this game, it's hard to survive. Okay. If you're a 2-pitch pitcher out of the bullpen, that's a little bit different because you're really good with those 2 pitches. And then it's a matter of you being able to spot them compared to them trying to make contact. But when you're a starter and you 3 or 4 pitch pitcher and 3 of them aren't working, what are you doing? How do you find a way to make an adjustment with those pitches along with letting that pitch that you have working for you continue to work for you, but not let it be as exposed as it does? Because as we said, hitters make adjustments, man. It used to be from game to game, then it became at bat to at bat. Now it's pitch to pitch because there's so much information for them to go by to know what you have and what you don't have.
No doubt about that. And you mentioned it, Palante, maybe a number 5. Well, Michaelis has kind of been described that way, maybe a number 5. And so it just feels like right now they maybe have too many guys in that category. And what's tricky about it, Claibs, we can always talk about, well, here's what's coming, the pitching prospects in the organization, but the ones that are healthy have mostly been at the AA level this year. A lot of the AAA guys have missed time due to injury. And so it's difficult to project, maybe outside of a Quinn Matthews, who I think maybe he comes into spring in February with a chance to show something. But otherwise, I just don't know that internally you've got guys who are ready to start that clock in 2026 and really contribute to your rotation. Is that how you see it? Or is there a chance they could look at some young guys and say, hey, we're going to throw several of them out there in the spring and, maybe one of them wins a job?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to make room for that sort of situation. And I think anybody who has swing and miss stuff moves to the front of the line. Pitch to contact. We're lucky we're good defensively. Okay. Because if we were the Yankees pitching to contact, we wouldn't be in any games. Hey, I'm looking at the Yankees over the weekend. And you look at as Chisholm and Anthony Volpe, but together they have 29 errors. 29. You look at Mason Wynn and Brendan Donovan, they have 5. Big difference. So can you imagine the pitch to contact rotation we have going to New York and pitching on that team? And that's just 2 guys I mentioned. Yeah, they have some other holes, but when you have swing and miss stuff, that's an option. And fortunately, we don't have enough of that. Unfortunately, we don't have enough of that.
Yeah, and it's something that they're trying to cultivate. But I remember Ollie, it was one of the recent spring trainings where he was kind of asked about, guys like Michaelis and different players. Can you get a little more swing and miss? We've talked about it for years. And at one point, he just sort of said, you can only go so far to turn what you have into swing and miss, because you can't just bring it out of a guy if it's not in there. And so it will come a point where I think over the course of time, personnel is going to have to change. And it's a matter of not only cultivating that, but you've got to get it in the organization first. And then you got to keep it healthy through AA and AAA. I think they had some of that, Claibs, but the problem is that, they haven't been able to kind of get away from the Tommy John surgery for a number of those guys this season as well, which is what makes it challenging. And it does also kind of what makes me wonder, 2026, everybody's got high hopes, but you also maybe are going to see this be more of a process that takes maybe an additional year to really get it into gear the way Cardinals fans want to see.
Well, when you get it in gear, you want to be in gear for a while. Okay. Mm-hmm. You can go out and do a quick fix, go out and sign some guys that, the reason why you sign them is because they're free agents, not because they're very good. Okay. We've seen that before. So in this situation, I think you have to say, all right, first of all, our philosophy is going to change on what swing and miss looks like, which means I don't need you trying to throw a 98-mile-an-hour fastball on every pitch, and by the 4th inning, you're gassed. Or even worse, we're talking about Tommy John. So the mindset has to change on what that looks like. I think you have to be smarter as far as pitching is concerned and how you utilize that. And I kind of, in just my brief experience around some of the people who are taking the reins, I kind of feel like they know how that might look, which I'm excited to see. It's going to be different than what we've done in the past. But it sounds like a lot of people on the same page.
Well, that's good to hear, for sure. I want to take to the comments here quickly, Claibs, and Leo is wanted to hear a little bit about Ivan Herrera. His bat was unbelievable to begin the season. And we said, you know what? If he's not a catcher, doesn't matter. He's in the lineup, and he's a guy that can help carry you. Bat falling off a bit. What's your interpretation of that? Has it just been a natural kind of decline after he was so high to begin? Or where do you come down on what we've seen from Ivan lately?
I think it's a combination of wear and tear. I think it's a combination of the league figuring out how to pitch him. I think it's a combination of him trying to do more, and I think it's just part of the growth process. And Ali touched on this early in the year. The development and the growth doesn't always have a good look to it. I think some of these guys have to figure out how to make adjustments, and some of these guys have to be able to adjust from failure. And I think Herrera is going to be a good player. And what does that number look like as far as batting average and OPS is concerned? I think the jury is still out on that. But I think he's certainly a guy that's going to be north of 275, 280. If you can get a guy doing that with a good OPS, okay, I'll take it. Everybody's not going to be a 300 hitter with a 900 OPS. Okay. That just doesn't happen. So you have to have a collection of players who provide different things to you. And I think this has been a learning process for him that he will certainly grow from. And I look forward to him being even more influential with regard to the direction of his offense next year.
Yeah, outside of Ivan Herrera, who we're all looking forward to seeing how he wraps up this season, Claibs, will let you go on this one. Coming up, big series against the Marlins, trying to find a way back toward the 500 record. Is there anything in particular, a player, a storyline that you are most eager to watch unfold over this week here in Miami?
You know, I'm fascinated by the play of Mason. We don't talk enough about his defense. And he's one of the guys that still comes up with the timely hit. Now, he's going to strike out sometime. Yeah, just like everybody else. But I really feel like he's coming around and rounding himself into being a more complete player where everything's not pulled. He goes the other way. He'll go up the middle. So I'm anxious to see how he fares. And obviously you want to see what, Nathan Church can do. Jordan Walker has taken a half step back, I think, offensively, where he's doing more guessing. He's looking at a lot of strikes, and in the pitches he chases, he does just that. They're probably, in a lot of cases, not strikes. So those are two guys I'm looking forward to seeing. And I'm looking forward to seeing one of these starters get through the sixth inning and not put the Cardinals in a position where they're already down 3 runs before they have an at bat. And that's been a problem. You cannot play catch up, chase baseball every day. Yeah, granted, the other team is paid to do their job too, and they're going to have their moments. But man, when they were at home, you were digging yourself out of a hole right after the national anthem. So they've got to find a way to put some runs on the board earlier and see if somebody can catch them.
That will be the name of the game starting tonight at 5:40 Central Time down in Miami. I'm looking forward to Libby tonight. I want to see him back to the sharper version that we saw from him earlier in the season, and we'll see if he is able to do that against a Marlins team kind of pretty similar in the standings with where the Cardinals are, unfortunately, right now, a few games below 500. So we'll look forward to that. You can make sure to join us right here on STL Sports Central for the post-game show right after the conclusion of the action between the Cardinals and Marlins tonight. But this has been Card Central 365, powered by Gray Bar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. And all content here on STL Sports Central is brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. For Mike Claiborne, I am Brenden Schaeffer. We'll see you tonight after the game.